Among the many iconic moments in The Walking Dead, and more specifically the ones involving Glenn, his apparent death in Season 6, Episode 3 is one of the more popular and controversial. The episode Thank You continued the fast pace of Season 6, gave us some excellent payoffs for storylines that had been set up for many episodes, and ended on one of the most heartbreaking deaths the show had ever given us. Or so we thought for a few weeks. In today's video, I'm going to be recapping the episode Thank You and giving my analysis as to why I think this truly should have been the last episode we got with Glenn. If you haven't seen my videos on the first two episodes of the season, you should check those out. I'll leave them in the top right corner of the video right now. I'm on a bit of a Season 6 kick right now. Don't know if you can tell it's my favorite season or not, but everybody grab your dumpsters to hide under and let's get into the episode. We start the episode off with Glenn and Rick running through the woods, the horn at Alexandria still blaring in the background. Daryl radios in asking what's going on, but nobody in the group really knows. He wants to go back and help, but Rick says that he should stay on course and keep the horde moving. As they walk through the woods, Nicholas stumbles, the pressure of the situation getting to him. Rick gives everybody an update on the plan, saying he'll take the RV and head back home. Because of the situation and how things are going, Rick tells Glenn and Michonne that not all of the Alexandrians are gonna make it. Heath listens in from behind a tree, and Rick's proven to be right just a moment later. So with Rick taking off on his own, the rest of the group keeps moving through the woods. They stumble upon a group of walkers, so Glenn, Michonne, and Heath go to take them out, but the other Alexandrians want to help too, resulting in a few bites, deaths, and an accidental shot in the leg. Daryl tells Sasha and Abraham that he's gonna go back around and help the others. Sasha and Abraham say that they're only 5 out of their 20 miles through the mission and they might need his help, but Daryl sees a sign for Alexandria. He tells them that they've got this covered and he goes on to turn back. The group comes to a town looking for some medical supplies for the 3 injured Alexandrians. Heath asks Nicholas about the run that went wrong with Deanna's son Aiden, asking if it was Rick's group's fault. Nicholas says that it wasn't and starts leading the others where to go. When they see walkers surrounding them on all sides and one of their friends getting eaten, Nicholas has another panic attack. They stop in at a store and Glenn plans on leaving with Nicholas to continue to draw the herd away by setting a building on fire. He radios Rick, who's running back towards Alexandria, clearing out a few walkers and injuring his hand in the process. Glenn updates him on his plan, saying "good luck, dumbass," before going over and out. Heath and Michonne argue because he doesn't think that this group has the best intentions for the rest of the Alexandrians. Michonne yells back, telling him that they do want what's best and to not leave people behind, but they know what the world is truly like. Heath says that he knows too since he goes out on runs, but when Michonne compares her journey to his, Heath realizes that he truly doesn't know what he's talking about. Glenn and Nicholas continue along their journey, finding a walker on the ground that Nicholas says was one of their own, but he left him behind in order to survive. Glenn tells Nicholas that he's not that guy anymore, and Nicholas puts the walker out of its misery. Rick makes it to the RV, past the checkpoint that they had been at a few hours earlier when the plan was actually going smoothly. Michonne and the group accidentally alert the surrounding walkers that they're inside, and with the horde closing in, they decide to make a run for it. They lose another Alexandrian in the process, but Glenn and Nicholas arrive at the building that they need to set on fire to find it's already been burned down. The horde starts closing in on Glenn and Nicholas, and now they have to run for it. Michonne and the group climb over a fence to get away from the horde following behind them, losing yet another Alexandrian, leaving only Heath, Scott, and Michonne left. Glenn and Nicholas run down an alley, finding it to be a dead end with walkers coming from behind them and in front of them. They stand on top of a dumpster, the walkers completely surrounding them when Nicholas has another panic attack. Glenn tries to calm him down, but it doesn't work, knocking both he and Glenn off the dumpster and into the horde of walkers below. Heath, Scott, and Michonne continue walking back to Alexandria when Scott collapses. Now essentially carrying him, they continue on. Michonne looks for the fire that should have been lit by now, and Heath tells her that just because there's no smoke doesn't mean they didn't make it. Rick drives the RV and stops it where Glenn said to meet him. Glenn doesn't respond, but Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha do. He tells them that they must continue the plan despite hearing gunfire from back home. As Rick prepares to say something on the radio, he gets attacked by the wolves. Daryl tries to contact him after hearing the gunfire, but Rick this time doesn't respond. He takes out the wolves, noticing that one of them has a can of baby food in his pocket. He also sees 3 more wolves trying to sneak up on him in the mirror, so Rick takes out his AK and gives them a surprise from inside the vehicle. Daryl drives on and meets back up with Sasha and Abraham, who still have a sizable chunk of the horde, while Michonne, Scott, and Heath arrive back at Alexandria. Rick tries to turn on the RV, now getting scared for what's happened at Alexandria when the horde comes through the woods, going towards their home that may or may not still be standing. While this episode might be remembered for one scene, and I'll get to that, don't you worry, what this episode is really about is the incompetence of the Alexandrians. And I'm not saying this in a mean or bad way, it's really just what the episode is about. When we start the episode, everybody is in the woods, and we know that the plan has already gone awry. Rick might have been teaching the Alexandrians the plan and how they're going to survive the plan, but he never expected things to go haywire outside of this specific plan. He knows that they're going to lose people, so he tells Glenn and Michonne this because this is just the way things are right now and they have to keep moving forward. Heath hears this and takes it to mean that Rick doesn't care about the Alexandrians, and by extent, neither do Glenn or Michonne. But Rick splits up on his own and leaves the Alexandrians in the care of Glenn and Michonne. We see time and time again that these people weren't prepared for this. They accidentally shoot one of their own in the leg, which is a clever little nod saying shoot yourself in the foot. They get snuck up on from behind and bitten, even injuring themselves just simply walking up a hill. These people were not prepared for this job in any way, shape, or form. This is further explained when Michonne and Heath argue with each other later on in the episode. Heath is arguably the most experienced Alexandrian, but he's nowhere near as experienced as Rick and his group. Michonne tells him that he's never seen a glimpse of himself in the mirror covered in so much blood you don't know if it's your own, a walker, or somebody else's, and towards the end of the episode, Heath sees his own reflection in the water, covered in so much blood he doesn't know if it's his, a walker's, or someone else's. Heath sees what Michonne is talking about now. He sees a glimpse into what this group has actually gone through and that they're ultimately right. None of the other Alexandrians were prepared for this, and in order to make it back home, some of them were gonna be lost along the way. Now, I'm not saying that our group is perfect either. Even they run into some hiccups along the way that proves that they weren't prepared for this either. Rick injures his hand fighting one of the walkers on the road, Michonne accidentally gets them all discovered by the walkers outside, and Glenn puts his faith into the wrong person. This episode shows things going from bad to worse and how many consequences there are when things don't go according to plan. While our group does make some mistakes, Rick still shines as a leader in this episode. The Alexandrians might have not been ready to hear it, but he was right that not everybody was going to make it back. He tells Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha to stay on course, and Daryl wants to circle back and go help the others, but Rick says that if they do that, they'd just be doing it for themselves and not for the good of Alexandria. These words hit Daryl, and he realizes that Rick is right, so he returns to carry on with the mission. While his words and methods may be a bit erratic and people may not always agree, Rick is truly looking out for the Alexandrians. It's just that they're playing checkers and Rick is playing chess, so they don't quite understand him. Nicholas and Glenn have had some history for quite some time. Disagreements, arguments, straight up physical fights, but Glenn always gave Nicholas the benefit of the doubt, even after he shot him. He believed that Nicholas could change, and for a time, Glenn was right, but at the end of the day, Nicholas is still an Alexandrian, and he wasn't ready to go on this mission. Glenn knew this and tried telling him that he wasn't ready and needed to stay back, but things don't always go according to plan, obviously, so Nicholas was stuck with the group when shit hit the fan. But these first couple episodes showed us exactly how much Nicholas has changed, and this episode gives him a proper end to his arc. No, not this scene, but this scene with him killing the walker that was once part of Alexandria. Glenn tells him that he's not that same person that left him for dead. He's a changed man now. And by killing the walker, Nicholas proves that he truly is a changed man. As usual, things go from bad to worse. The building they wanted to set on fire has already been burned down, and the walkers close in all around them. Glenn really did save Nicholas's life. He helped him become a different person, but he was never going to truly become one of Rick's group. He was never going to be able to change into a true survivor. But he's thankful for Glenn, giving him the opportunity to change until there was no way out. So Glenn's kindness and ability to always see the good in people is ultimately what dooms him in this world. Or not. See, when this episode first came out, I remember watching this and thinking, Glenn truly died right here. I remember my mom saying, no, it was Nicholas on top of him, you just didn't see him. I remember saying, Mom, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They would never do that, just pretend to kill somebody off. Such an important character, just for him to actually be alive, that's the most ridiculous thing. And boy, was I wrong. I held on to this line of thinking for a few more minutes until the episode ended and Talking Dead started. Stephen Yeun wasn't there, and they always have on the guest that dies in the episode, but Stephen Yeun, who plays Glenn, a guy who has been there from the beginning, wasn't there. I knew in that moment that Glenn wasn't truly dead, and honestly, it kinda pissed me off. Especially if you look at the trajectory of Glenn's remaining character arc. If for some reason you're watching this without having seen the rest of season 6 and beyond that, now's the time to stop watching, but Glenn actually does survive this, just to actually die in another 14 episodes. Now, 14 episodes is a lot of time, but what does Glenn do in these next 14 episodes? He sees the group go down a much darker path than they've ever taken before, a path that he himself also has to take against his own wishes, sees that his wife is pregnant, just to ultimately die a horrific death in front of her. So Glenn's final months alive, he learns that he's going to be a father, becomes a killer even when he never wished to take another person's life, and see that the darker path the group went down ultimately led for him and possibly everybody else he was with to die. I talked about this extensively in my character analysis of Glenn video, but Glenn's arc with this false dumpster death doesn't really make any sense. And the main argument I always heard was, this is The Walking Dead and anybody can die regardless of if they're in the middle of their character arc because it's a dangerous world. And sure, they can, but in the context of a narrative story you're telling with supremely important characters, it doesn't make any sense. Let's just say that this moment truly was the end for Glenn. His own moral compass and ultimate goodness is his cause of death. Glenn never learns that he's going to be a father, which is tragic, but he also never has to go against his own moral compass and kill for the sake of the group. Glenn was always the moral compass of the group, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the group to go down a darker path because Glenn is no longer around. Instead, we got another 14 episodes of Glenn, which I'm all for, by the way. I loved Glenn, but in that time, he didn't have much to do other than do things against his own ethics so that he can eventually meet his comic book fate. So this might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually think that if Glenn died right here, it would have been a really powerful death. Going forward in the show, people always said that walkers weren't really as big of a threat as they were in the past, and giving one of the most lovable characters a death by walkers isn't really something we saw much more going forward. I ultimately think that Glenn surviving this was a bad idea. If they were going to give us a fake out death right here, then I would have liked for him to continue on past his comic death and see what that would have been like. Overall, Thank You delivered some great moments and one of the most iconic moments of the show, even if afterwards it didn't really pan out too well in the long run. Now, I know I've made some really unpopular remarks in this video, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you do, then I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.